Chili's first. Da, da. Da, da, da. Mark's here. Welcome, everybody. Whoa. It's too intense. Da. Okay. Welcome to Conk's Corner with John Weasley. Ron Reedsley. John Reedsley. My name is John Voth. Who you just saw was Mark creeping into frame. This is Dexter. Little Dexter. I am reading Harry Potter 1 hour every day to connect with you, to take your minds off things, to have some fun. I have not read the books. I have only seen 2 or 3 of the movies. I don't remember anything from them. Also, you know, I've had a couple of conversations with friends over the last week. People having a hard time, some people having an easier time. Regardless, I want you to know that, you know, you have value, you have meaning, you are loved, even though it doesn't feel like it. So I read all the comments afterwards. I cannot interact there and read at the same time. No spoilers in the comments, no hints about what's coming or what you like or dislike about what's coming up. I save all these on YouTube, so go on there to catch up. The link is in my bio. Don't forget to clap for your nurses. And another thing, tomorrow it's going to be a bit different because I got contacted by a documentary maker, and he's taking video of different interesting things that are happening during this whole epidemic. And so he got in contact with me. So tomorrow will be Summer Outside. We'll probably finish up the book. Oh no, we'll probably have 2 more sessions. Finish up the book tomorrow outside. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so summary of what happened till now. What did happen? Oh yeah. Harry went back in time and he discovered that Hagrid, young teenage Hagrid, was the one who released the hounds. He basically opened the Chamber of Secrets and released this monster that is going to kill the heir of Slytherin. Right? This monster is going around killing the heir of Slytherin, if I've understood it right till now. And he was the one who did it. And also somebody went into Harry's room, ransacked everything, and stole the diary of little Timmy. What's his name? I can't remember the
Tom Riddle.
Tom Riddle, not little Timmy. So, we're going to start on page 188 of this book, if you are following along. They woke next day to brilliant sunshine and a light, refreshing breeze. "Perfect Quidditch conditions," said Wood enthusiastically at the Gryffindor table, loading the team's plates with scrambled eggs. "Harry, buck up there. You need a decent breakfast." Harry had been staring down the packed Gryffindor table, wondering if the new owner of Riddle's diary was right in front of his eyes. Hermione had been urging him to report the robbery, but Harry didn't like the idea. He'd have to tell a teacher all about the diary and how many people knew why Hagrid had been expelled 50 years ago. He didn't want to be the one who brought it all up again. As he left the Great Hall with Ron and Hermione to go and collect his Quidditch things, another very serious worry was added to Harry's growing list. He had just set foot on the marble staircase when he heard it again. "Kill this time. Let me rip. Tear." He shouted aloud, and Ron and Hermione both jumped away from him in alarm. "That voice!" said Harry, looking over his shoulder. I just heard it again. Didn't you?" Ron shook his head, wide-eyed. Hermione, however, clapped a hand to her forehead. "Harry, I think I've just understood something. I've got to go to the library." And she sprinted away up the stairs. What does she understand?" said Harry distractedly, still looking around, trying to tell where the voice had come from. "Loads more than I do," said Ron, shaking his head. "But why has she got to go to the library?" "Because that's what Hermione does," said Ron, shrugging. "When in doubt, go to the library." Harry stood, irresolute, also a very good word, trying to catch the voice again, but people were now emerging from the great hall behind him, talking loudly, exiting through the front doors on their way to the Quidditch pitch. "You'd better get moving," said Ron. "It's nearly 11. The match." Dexter keeps turning around so he's not in frame. There he is, for all you dog lovers. That voice is terrifying. Well, I try. That's what I constantly hear when I sleep, so I know perfectly how to replicate it. Harry raced up to the Gryffindor Tower, collecting his Nimbus 2000, and joined the large crowd swarming across the grounds. But his mind was still in the castle, along with the bodiless voice. And as he pulled on his scarlet robes in the changing room, his only comfort was that everyone was now outside to watch the game. The teams walked onto the pitch to tumultuous applause. Oliver Wood took off for a warm-up flight around the goalposts. Madam Hooch released the balls. The Hufflepuffs, who played in Canary Yellow, were standing in a huddle, having a last-minute discussion of tactics. Harry was just mounting his broom when Professor McGonagall came half marching, half running across the pitch, carrying an enormous purple megaphone. Harry's heart dropped like a stone. "This match has been cancelled," Professor McGonagall called through the megaphone, addressing the packed stadium. There were boos and shouts. Oliver Wood, looking devastated, landed and ran towards Professor McGonagall without getting off his broomstick. But Professor," he shouted, "we've got to play. The cup! Gryffindor—" Professor McGonagall ignored him and continued to shout through her megaphone. "All students are to make their way back to the House Common Rooms, where their heads of houses will give them further information. As quickly as you can, please." Then she lowered the megaphone and beckoned Harry over to her. "Potter, I think you'd better come with me." Wondering how she could possibly suspect him this time, Harry saw Ron detach himself from the complaining crowd. He came running up to them as they set off towards the castle. To Harry's surprise, Professor McGonagall didn't object. To be honest, I'm kind of glad they didn't go into another description of a match. In this book, at least. "Yes, perhaps you'd better come too, Weasley." Some of the students swarming around them were grumbling about the match being cancelled. Others looked worried. Harry and Ron followed Professor McGonagall back into the school and up the marble staircase. But they weren't taken to anybody's office this time. "This will be a bit of a shock," said Professor McGonagall in a surprisingly gentle. "This will be a bit of a shock," said Professor McGonagall in a surprisingly gentle voice as they approached the hospital wing. "There has been another attack, another double attack." Harry's inside did a horrible somersault. Professor McGonagall pushed the door open and he and Ron entered. Madame Pomfrey was bending over a fifth-year girl with long curly hair. Harry recognized her as the Ravenclaw they'd accidentally asked for directions to the Slytherin common room. And on the bed next to her was... "Hermione!" Ron groaned. "Oh, no! Hermione? She's dead! She's never gonna come back in these books!" But I am worried for her. Like a father. Truth be told, Jordan, I don't think half of us are wearing clothes. That's probably very true. Hermione lay utterly still, her eyes open and glassy. They were found near the library," said Professor McGonagall. "I don't suppose either of you can explain this. It was on the floor next to them." She was holding up a small, circular mirror. Harry and Ron shook their heads, both staring at Hermione. I will escort you back to Gryffindor Tower," said Professor McGonagall heavily. "I need to address the students in any case." Snap! Snap, 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 snap! Okay, I throw questions out in the middle just to interact with you. They're not necessarily Harry Potter related. What's your pet peeve? What's your pet peeve that people do? All students... Oh, who's saying this? Professor McGonagall. "All students will return to their house common rooms by 6 o'clock in the evening. No student is to leave the dormitories after that time. You will be escorted to each lesson by a teacher. No student is to use the bathroom unaccompanied by a teacher. All further Quidditch training and matches are to be postponed. There will be no more evening activities. The Gryffindors packed inside the common room, listened to Professor McGonagall in silence. She rolled up the parchment from which she had been reading and said in a somewhat choked voice, I need hardly add that I've rarely been so distressed. It is likely that the school will be closed unless the culprit behind these attacks is caught. I would urge anyone who thinks they might know anything about them to come forward. She climbed somewhat awkwardly out of the portrait hole, and the Gryffindors began talking immediately. Weasley's twin friends, Lee Jordan, that's Australian. That's two Oh, gosh. I used to have a full-blown Australian accent. There we go. That's 2 Gryffindors down, not counting a Gryffindor ghost, 1 Ravenclaw, and 1 Hufflepuff, said the Weasley's twins' friend Lee Jordan, counting on his fingers. Haven't any of the teachers noticed that the Slytherins are all safe? Isn't it obvious all this stuff's coming from Slytherin? The heir of Slytherin, the monster of Slytherin. Why don't they just chuck all the Slytherins out? He roared to nods and scattered applause. That was okay. I can't believe, like, my German and my Australian accent, those are the hardest ones for me to remember. I think because of just, I have to think about them rather than just naturally have the accents, because it's changed since I've had them. Maybe it's that. Percy Weasley was sitting in a chair behind Lee, but for once, he didn't seem keen to make his views heard. He was looking pale and stunned. Percy's in shock, George told Harry quickly. That Ravenclaw girl, Penelope Clearwater, she's a prefect. I don't think he thought the monster would dare attack a prefect. But Harry was only half listening. He didn't seem to be able to get rid of the picture of Hermione, lying on the hospital bed, as though carved out of stone. And if the culprit wasn't caught soon, he was looking at a lifetime back with the Dursleys. Tom Riddle had turned Hagrid in because he was faced with the prospect of a Muggle orphanage if the school closed. Harry now knew exactly how he had felt. What are we going to do? Said Ron quietly in Harry's ear. Do you think they suspect Hagrid? We've got to go and talk to him, said Harry, making up his mind. I can't believe it's him this time. But if he set the monster loose last time, he'll know how to get inside the Chamber of Secrets. And that's a start. But McGonagall said we've got to stay in a tower unless we're in class. I think, said Harry, more quietly still, it's time to get my dad's old cloak out again. What? I don't remember what's so special about this cloak.
It's the invisibility cloak.
Wasn't that torn? They said the cloak was torn.
No, that was just his robes.
Oh, I was so bummed because I thought they had went in there and tore apart his magical robe. I was like, whoa, what a douche move.
No, just...
Okay, cool. Harry had inherited just one thing from his father, a long and silvery invisibility cloak. It was their only chance of sneaking out of the school to visit Hagrid without anyone knowing about it. They went to bed at the usual time, waited until Neville, Dean, and Seamus had stopped discussing the Chamber of Secrets and finally fallen asleep, then got up, dressed again, and threw the cloak over themselves. Ooh, I'm gonna put on some like little sneaky music. I don't know if it's gonna work, but let's see if this works. Because it's sneaky time. It's called Epic Death Eater Music Mix. Ooh, yeah. Oh, here we go. The journey through the dark and deserted castle corridors wasn't enjoyable. Harry, who had wandered the castle at night several times before, had never seen it so crowded after sunset. Teachers, prefects, and ghosts were marching the corridors in pairs, staring around for any unusual activity. Their invisibility cloak didn't stop them from making noise, and there was a particular tense moment when Ron stubbed his toe only yards from the spot where Snape stood standing guard. Thankfully, Snoop sneezed. Snoop sneezed. A chew sizzle. Thankfully, Snape sneezed at almost the exact moment Ron swore. It was with relief that they reached the oak front doors and eased them open. It was a clear, starry night. They hurried towards the lit windows of Hagrid's house and pulled off the cloak only when they were right outside his front door. Seconds after they had knocked, Hagrid flung it open. They found themselves face to face with him, aiming a crossbow at them. Fang, the boarhound, barking loudly behind him. That's 4 pets now that he has, right? 4 pets that we know of. "Oh," he said, lowering the weapon and staring at them. "What are you two doing here?" "What's that for?" said Harry, pointing at the crossbow as they stepped inside. "Nothing. Nothing," Hagrid muttered. "I've been expecting... That doesn't matter. Sit down. I'll make tea." He hardly seemed to know what he was doing. He nearly extinguished the fire, spilling water from the kettle on it, and then smashed the teapot with a nervous jerk of his massive hand. "Are you okay, Hagrid?" said Harry. "Did you..." This isn't working right now. This is a normal conversation scene. "Are you okay, Hagrid?" said Harry. "Did you hear about Hermione?" "Oh, I heard, all right," said Hagrid, a slight break in his voice. He kept glancing nervously at the windows. He poured them both large mugs of boiling water. He had forgotten to add tea bags. And was just putting a slab of fruitcake on a plate when there was a loud knock on the door. Hagrid dropped the fruitcake. Harry and Ron exchanged panic-stricken looks, then threw the invisibility cloak back over themselves and retreated into a corner. Hagrid checked that they were hidden, seized his crossbow, and flung open the door once more. Who is this? Dumbledore. "Good evening, Hagrid." It was Dumbledore. He entered, looking deadly serious, and was followed by a second, very odd-looking man. Somebody new, give me some adjectives, please. Adjectives for this person who I don't know who it is yet. The stranger was a short, portly man with rumpled gray hair and an anxious expression. He was wearing a strange mix of clothes, a pinstriped suit, a scarlet tie, a long black cloak, and pointed purple boots. Under his arms, he carried a lime green bowler. "That's Dad's boss," Ron breathed. "Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic." Cornelius Fudge, so adjectives for this dude. Harry elbowed Ron hard to make him shut up. Hagrid had gone pale and sweaty. He dropped into one of his chairs and looked from Dumbledore to Cornelius Fudge. Impatient, sweaty, authoritative, anxious, excitable, older politician. Bad business, Hagrid," said Fudge in rather clipped tones. "Very bad business. Had to come. 4 attacks on Muggleborns. Things have gone far enough. Ministry's got to act." "I never," said Hagrid, looking imploringly at Dumbledore. "You know I never. Professor Dumbledore. Sir." Dumbledore. "I want it understood, Cornelius, that Hagrid has my full confidence," said Dumbledore, frowning at Fudge. Look, Albus," said Fudge uncomfortably. "Hagrid's reckon's against him. Ministry's got to do something. The school governors have been in touch." "Yet again, Cornelius, I tell you that taking Hagrid away will not help in the slightest," said Dumbledore. His blue eyes were full of fire Harry had never seen before. "Look at it from my point of view," said Fudge, fidgeting with his bowler. "I'm under a lot of pressure. Got to be seen me doing something. If it turns out it wasn't Hagrid, he'll be back and no more said. But I've got to take him. Got to. Wouldn't be doing my duty." "Take me?" said Hagrid, who was trembling. "Take me where?" "For a short stretch only," said Fudge, not meeting Hagrid's eyes. "Not a punishment, Hagrid. More a precaution. If someone else is caught, you'll be let out with a full apology." Not Azkaban," croaked Hagrid. Before Fudge could answer, that's the wizard prison, right? I think that's the wizard prison, yeah. Before Fudge could answer, there was another loud rap on the door. Dumbledore answered it. It was Harry's turn for an elbow in the ribs. He let out an audible gasp. Mr. Lucius Malfoy strode into Hagrid's hut, swathed in a long black traveling cloak, smiling a cold and satisfied smile. Satisfied smile. Fang started to growl. "Already here, Fudge," he said approvingly. Good. Good.
What are you doing here? Said Hagrid furiously. Get out of my house!
My dear man, please believe me. I have no pleasure at all in being inside your, do you call this a house? Said Lucius Malfoy, sneering as he looked around the small cabin. I simply called at the school and was told that the headmaster was here.
And what exactly did you want with me, Lucius?
Said Dumbledore. He spoke quite politely, but the fire was still blazing. Gotta get more fire going. But the fire was still blazing in his blue eyes. Dreadful thing, Dumbledore, said Mr. Malfoy lazily, taking out a long roll of parchment. But the governors feel it's time for you to step aside. This is an order of suspension. You'll find all 12 signatures on it. I'm afraid we feel you're losing your touch. How many attacks have there been now? 2 more this afternoon, wasn't it? At this rate, there'll be no more Muggle-borns left at Hogwarts, and we all know what an awful loss that would be to the school.
Now, see here, Lucius, said Fudge, looking alarmed. Dumbledore suspended. No. Last thing we want just now.
The appointment, or suspension, of the headmaster is a matter for the governors, Fudge, said Malfoy smoothly. And as Dumbledore has failed to stop these attacks...
No, look, Lucius, if Dumbledore can't stop them,
said Fudge, whose upper lip was sweating now.
I mean to say, who can?
That remains to be seen, said Mr. Malfoy with a nasty smile. But as all 12 of us have voted... Hagrid leapt to his feet, his shaggy black head grazing the ceiling.
And how many did you have to threaten and blackmail before they agreed, Malfoy? Eh?
He roared. Mr. Malfoy. Dear, you know that temper of yours will lead you into trouble one of these days, Hagrid, said Mr. Malfoy. I would advise you not to shout at the Azkaban guards like that. They won't like it at all.
You can take Dumbledore,
yelled Hagrid, making Fang the boarhound cower and whimper in his basket.
Take him away, and the Muggleborns won't stand a chance. They'll be killing next.
Calm yourself, Hagrid,
said Dumbledore sharply. He looked at Lucius Malfoy.
If the governors want my removal, Lucius, I shall of course step aside.
But,
stuttered Fudge.
No!
Growled Hagrid. Dumbledore had not taken his bright blue eyes off Lucius Malfoy's cold grey ones.
However,
said Dumbledore, speaking very slowly and clearly, so that none of them could miss a word.
You will find that I will only truly have left this school when none here are loyal to me. You will also find that help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it.
For a second, Harry was almost sure Dumbledore's eyes flickered towards the corner where he and Ron stood hidden. Admirable sentiments, said Malfoy, bowing. We shall all miss your, highly individual way of running things, Albus, and only hope that your successor will manage to prevent any, killings. He strode to the cabin door, opened it, and bowed Dumbledore out. Fudge, fiddling with his bowler, waited for Hagrid to go ahead of him, but Hagrid stood his ground, took a deep breath, and said carefully,
If anyone wanted to find out some stuff, all they'd have to do would be to follow the spiders. That'll lead 'em right. That's all I'm saying.
Fudge stared at him in amazement.
All right, I'm coming,
said Hagrid, pulling on his moleskin overcoat. But as he was about to follow Fudge through the door, he stopped again and said loudly,
And someone will need to feed Fang while I'm away.
The door banged shut, and Ron pulled the invisibility cloak off. "We're in trouble now," he said hoarsely. "No Dumbledore? They might as well close the school tonight. There'll be an attack a day with him gone." Fang started howling, scratching at the closed door. Whoa! A lot happened in that one. Wow. Hagrid locked up at Azkaban, Dumbledore fired, Lucius playing his games, probably threatening a lot of people, as Hagrid insinuated. Oh, man. And when Dumbledore said, "Help will always come to this and that person," that probably means there's some kind of magical spell or something over the school that the evil won't have full control or something like that. That's what I'm guessing. Yeah. Thank you, Anita Spence. Yeah, I had a lot of fun reading that scene. That's a very fun scene to read. Here's another question for you. Insinuated. Yeah, that's a great word. If you're having a bad day, what do you do to make yourself feel better? I would like to know that. Here we go. Chapter 15. Aragog. Whatever that is. Summer was creeping over the grounds around the castle. Sky and lake alike turned periwinkle blue. Woo! Good word too. Periwinkle blue. Sky and lake alike turned periwinkle blue, and flowers large as cabbages burst into bloom in the greenhouses. But with no Hagrid visible from the castle windows, striding the grounds with Fang at his heels, the scene didn't look right to Harry. No better, in fact, than the inside of the castle, where things were so horribly wrong. Harry and Ron had tried to visit Hermione, but visitors were now barred from the hospital wing. Madame Pomfrey. That's the nurse. "We're taking no more chances," Madame Pomfrey told him severely through a crack in the hospital door. "No, I'm sorry. There's every chance the attacker might come back to finish those people off." With Dumbledore gone, fear had spread as never before, so that the sun warming the castle walls outside seemed to stop at the mullioned windows. There was barely a face to be seen in the school that didn't look worried and tense, and any laughter that rang through the corridors sounded shrill and unnatural and was quickly stifled. Harry constantly repeated Dumbledore's final words to himself. "I will only truly have left this school when none..." Oh, Dumbledore.
I will only truly have left this school when none here are loyal to me. Help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it."
But what good were these words? Who exactly were they supposed to ask for help when everyone was just as confused and scared as they were? Hagrid's hint about the spiders was far easier to understand. The trouble was, there didn't seem to be a single spider left in the castle to follow. Harry looked everywhere he went, helped, rather reluctantly, by Ron. They were oh yeah, he's scared of... No, he's scared of snakes. No, Ron is scared of spiders or snakes? I can't remember. Well, we'll get there. They were hampered, of course, by the fact that they weren't allowed to wander off on their own, but had to move around the castle in a pack with the other Gryffindors. Most of their fellow students seemed glad that they were being shepherded from class to class by teachers, but Harry found it very irksome. One person, however, seemed to be thoroughly enjoying the atmosphere of terror and suspicion. Draco Malfoy was strutting around the school as though he had just been appointed head boy. Harry didn't realize what he was so pleased about until the potions lesson about a fortnight after Dumbledore and Hagrid had left. When sitting right behind Malfoy, Harry overheard him gloating to Crabbe and Goyle. "I always thought Father might be the one who got rid of Dumbledore," he said, not troubling to keep his voice down. "I told you he thinks Dumbledore's the worst headmaster this school's ever had. Maybe we'll get a decent headmaster now. Someone who won't want the Chamber of Secrets closed. McGonagall won't last long. She's only filling in." Snape swept past Harry, making no comment about Hermione's empty seat in Cauldron. "Sir," said Malfoy loudly, "Sir, why don't you apply for the headmaster's job?" Now, Malfoy, said Snape, though he couldn't suppress a thin-lipped smile. Professor Dumbledore has only been suspended by the governors. I dare say he'll be back with us soon enough, though. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Said Malfoy, smirking. I expect you'd have Father's vote, sir, if you wanted to apply for the job. I'll tell Father you're the best teacher here, sir. Snape smirked as he swept off around the dungeon, fortunately not spotting Seamus Finnegan, who was pretending to vomit into his cauldron. I'm quite surprised the mudbloods haven't all packed their bags by now, Malfoy went on. Bet you 5 galleons the next one dies. Pity it wasn't Granger. Whoa, this kid's a little psychopath.
Oh, yeah.
He's a little murderer. He's just gonna go around killing and killing and killing. The bell rang at the moment, which was very lucky. At Malfoy's last words, Ron had leapt off his stool, and in the scramble to collect bags and books, his attempts to reach Malfoy went unnoticed. Let me at him, Ron growled as Harry and Dean hung onto his arms. I don't care. I don't need my wand. I'm going to kill him with my bare hands. Hurry up. I've got to take you all to herbology, barked Snape over the class heads, and off they went, crocodile fashion, with crocodile fashion. I've never heard that before. They're all like, snap, 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 here we go to the next class, snap, snap, snap. Okay, that was really dumb. That was so dumb. With Harry, Ron, and Dean bringing up the rear, Ron still trying to get loose. It was only safe to let go of him when Snape had seen them out of the castle, and they were making their way across the vegetable patch towards the greenhouses. The herbology class was very subdued. There were now 2 missing from their number, Justin and Hermione. Professor Sprout set them all to work pruning the Abyssinian shrivel figs. Harry went to tip an armful of withered stalks onto the compost heap and found himself face to face with Ernie Macmillan. Oh yeah, okay, I remember who he is. Ernie took a deep breath and said very formally, I just want to say, Harry, that I'm very sorry I ever suspected you. I know you'd never attack Hermione Granger, and I apologize for all the stuff I said. We're all in the same boat now, and, well, he held out a pudgy hand. Let me know if that's the right voice for him. He held out a pudgy hand, and Harry shook it. Ernie and his friend Hannah came to work at the same shrivel fig as Harry and Ron. That Draco Malfoy character, said Ernie, breaking off dead twigs. He seems very pleased about all this, doesn't he? Do you know, I think he might be Slytherin's heir. That's clever of you, said Ron, who didn't seem to have forgiven Ernie as readily as Harry. Do you think it's Malfoy, Harry? Ernie asked. No, said Harry, so firmly that Ernie and Hannah stared. I guess it works out, but more pompous for Ernie. Okay, thank you. A second later, Harry spotted something that made him hit Ron over the hand with his pruning shears. Ouch! What are you... Harry was pointing at the ground a few feet away. Several large spiders were scurrying across the earth. Oh, yeah, said Ron, trying and failing to look pleased. But we can't follow them now. Ernie and Hannah were listening curiously. Harry watched the spiders running away. Looks like they're heading for the Forbidden Forest. Ooh, I hope the Italian steeds come.
Steeds?
Come back. Those masculine Italian steeds. We have come to save you. Okay. Where are we? And Ron looked even unhappier about that. At the end of the lesson, Professor Snoop escorted the class to their defense against the dark arts lesson. Harry and Ron lagged behind the others so they could talk out of earshot. We'll have to use the invisibility cloak again, Harry told Ron. We can take Fang with us. He's used to going into the forest with Hagrid. He might be some help. Right, said Ron, who was twirling his wand nervously in his fingers. Aren't there supposed to be werewolves in the forest? He added, as they took their usual places at the back of Lockhart's classroom. Preferring not to answer that question, Harry said, "There are good things in there too. The centaurs are all right, and the unicorns." Ron had never been into the Forbidden Forest before. Harry had entered it only once, and he hoped never to do so again. Lockhart bounded into the room, and the class stared at him. Every other teacher in the place bounded into the room. Aha! Every other teacher in the place was looking grimmer than usual, but Lockhart appeared nothing short of buoyant. "Come now," he cried, beaming around him. "Why all these long faces?" People swapped exasperated looks, but nobody answered. "Don't you people realize," said speaking slowly. "Don't you people realize," said Lockhart, speaking slowly, as though they were all a bit dim. "The danger has passed. The culprit has been taken away." "Says who?" said Dean Thomas loudly. No, he's Irish too, right? Dean Thomas? "Let me know." "Says who?" said Dean Thomas loudly. "My dear young man, the Minister of Magic wouldn't have taken Hagrid if he hadn't been 100% sure that he was guilty," said Lockhart, in the tone of someone explaining that 1 and 1 made 2. "Oh, yes, he would," said Ron, even more loudly than Dean. I flatter myself I know a touch more about Hagrid's arrest than you do, Mr. Weasley," said Lockhart in a self-satisfied tone. Ron started to say that he didn't think so, somehow, but stopped in mid-sentence when Harry kicked him hard under the desk. "We weren't there, remember?" Harry muttered. But Lockhart's disgusting cheeriness, his hints that he had always thought Hagrid was no good, his confidence that the whole business was now at an end, irritated Harry so much that he yearned to throw gadding with the Goulds right in Lockhart's stupid face. Instead, he contented himself with scrawling a note to Ron. "Let's do it tonight." Ron read the message, swallowed hard, and looked sideways at the empty seat usually filled by Hermione. The sight seemed to stiffen his resolve, and he nodded. Another question. I'll keep it. No, I'll give you one more. If you could time travel, where would you go to? What age? The Gryffindor common room was always very crowded these days, because from 6 o'clock onwards, the Gryffindors had nowhere else to go. They also had plenty to talk about, with the result that the common room often didn't empty until past midnight. Harry went to get the invisibility cloak out of his trunk right after dinner, and spent the evening sitting on it, waiting for the room to clear. Fred and George challenged Harry and Ron to a few games of exploding snap, and Ginny sat watching them, very subdued in Hermione's usual chair. Harry and Ron kept losing on purpose, trying to finish the games quickly, but even so, it was well past midnight when Fred, George, and Ginny finally went to bed. Harry and Ron waited for the distant sounds of 2 dormitory doors closing before seizing the cloak, throwing it over themselves, and climbing through the portrait hole. It was another difficult journey through the castle. Okay, let's see if this music works now. I'm just trying stuff out, seeing how it works. It's a bit too intense, I guess. Let's see how it works. Let's see, portrait hole. It was another difficult journey through the castle, dodging all the teachers. At last they reached the entrance hall, slid back the lock on the oak front doors, squeezed between them, trying to stop any creaking, and stepped out into the moonlit grounds. "Course," said Ron abruptly, as they strode across the black grass, we might get to the forest and find there's nothing to follow. Those spiders might not have even been going there at all. I know it looked like they were moving in that sort of general direction, but..." His voice trailed away hopefully. They reached Hagrid's house, sad and sorry-looking with its blank windows. When Harry pushed the door open, Fang went mad with joy at the sight of them. Worried he might wake everyone at the castle with his deep, booming barks, they hastily fed him treacle fudge from a tin on the mantelpiece, which glued his teeth together. Isn't fudge chocolate? It is, isn't it?
Treacle fudge is different.
Is it? So there's no chocolate in treacle fudge? They're
No idea.
feeding a dog chocolate. Numbnuts. Harry left the invisibility cloak on Hagrid's table. There would be no need for it in the pitch-dark forest. Come on, Fang, we're going for a walk, said Harry, patting his leg. And Fang bounded happily out of the house behind them, dashed to the edge of the forest, and lifted his leg against a large sycamore tree. Harry took out his wand, murmured, "Lumos!" and a tiny light appeared at the end of it, just enough to let them watch the path for signs of spiders. Good thinking, said Ron. I'd light mine too, but, it'd probably blow up or something. Harry tapped Ron on the shoulder, pointing at the grass. 2 solitary spiders were hurrying away from the wand light into the shade of the trees. Okay, Ron sighed, as though resigned to the worst. I'm ready. Let's go. So, with Fang scampering around them, sniffing tree roots and leaves, they entered the forest. By the glow of Harry's wand, they followed the steady trickle of spiders moving along the path. Caramel fudge, right. They walked for about 20 minutes, not speaking, listening hard for noises other than the breaking twigs and rustling leaves. Then, when the trees had become thicker than ever, so that the stars overhead were no longer visible, and Harry's wand shone alone in the sea of dark, they saw their spider guides leaving the path. Harry paused, trying to see where the spiders were going. But everything outside his little sphere of light was pitch black. He had never been this deep into the forest before. He could vividly remember Hagrid advising him not to leave the forest path last time he'd been in here. But Hagrid was miles away now, probably sitting in a cell in Azkaban, and he had also said to follow the spiders. Something wet touched Harry's hand, and he jumped backwards, crushing Ron's foot, but it was only Fang's nose. What do you reckon? Harry said to Ron, whose eyes he could just make out, reflecting the light from his wand. You've come this far, said Ron. So they followed the darting shadows of the spiders into the trees. They couldn't move very quickly. There were tree roots and stumps in their way, barely visible in the near blackness. Harry could feel Fang's hot breath on his hand. More than once they had to stop, so that Harry could crouch down and find the spiders in the wand light. They walked for what seemed like at least half an hour, their robes snagging on low-slung branches and brambles. After a while, they noticed that the ground seemed to be sloping downwards, though the trees were as thick as ever. Then Fang suddenly let loose a great, echoing bark, making both Harry and Ron jump out of their skins. What? Said Ron loudly, looking around into the pitch dark, and gripping Harry's elbow very hard. There's something moving over there, Harry breathed. Listen. Sounds like something big. They listened. Some distance to their right, the something big was snapping branches as it carved a way through the trees. Oh no, said Ron. Oh no, oh no, oh, shut up, said Harry frantically. It'll hear you. Hear me, said Ron in an unnaturally high... Hear me, said Ron in an unnaturally high voice. It's already heard Fang. The darkness seemed to be pressing on their eyeballs as they stood, terrified, waiting. There was a strange rumbling noise, and then silence. What do you think it's doing? Said Harry. Probably getting ready to pounce, said Ron. They waited, shivering, hardly daring to move. Do you think it's gone? Harry whispered. Dunno. Then to their right came a sudden blaze of light, so bright in the darkness that both of them flung up their hands to shield their eyes. Fang yelped and tried to run, but got lodged in a tangle of thorns and yelped even louder. Hurry! Ron shouted, his voice breaking with relief. Hurry! It's our car! No! Come on! You kidding me? What? Come on! I don't have any words for this even. Our car's just been like, chuck them out. It's like having enough and just been trundling through the forests. So what, are we scrounging for oil?
Probably some oil somewhere here.
Finally finding them again. This is so dumb and great. Okay, it's dumb and great. It's what it is. Okay, it's not it's amazing, but it's also dumb. Harry blundered after Ron toward the light, stumbling and tripping, and a moment later they had emerged into a clearing. Mr. Weasley's car was standing, empty, in the middle of a circle of thick trees under a roof of dense branches, its headlamps ablaze. It had undressed and was waiting for them. As Ron walked open-mouthed towards it, it moved slowly towards him, exactly like a large turquoise dog greeting its owner. It's been here all the time, said Ron delightedly, walking around the car. Look at it. The forest turned it wild. The wings of the car were scratched and smeared with mud. Apparently, it had taken to trundling around the forest on its own. Fang didn't seem at all keen on it. He kept close to Harry, who could feel him quivering. His breathing slowing again, Harry stuffed his wand back into his robes. And we thought it was going to attack us, said Ron, leaning against the car and patting it. I wondered where it had gone. Harry squinted around the flood-lit grounds for signs of more spiders, but they had all scuttled away from the glare of the headlights. We've lost the trail, he said. Come on, let's go and find them. Ron didn't speak. He didn't move. His eyes were fixed on a point some 10 feet above the forest floor. Right behind Harry, his face was livid with terror. Harry didn't even have time to turn around. There was a loud clicking noise, and suddenly he felt something long and hairy seize him around the middle and lift him from the ground so that he was hanging face down. Struggling, terrified, he heard more clicking and saw Ron's legs leave the ground too, heard Fang whimpering and howling. Next moment, he was being swept away into the dark trees. Head hanging, Harry saw that what had hold of him was marching on 6 immensely long, hairy legs, the front 2 clutching him tightly below a pair of shining black pincers. Behind him, he could hear another of the creatures, no doubt carrying Ron. They were moving into the very heart of the forest. Harry could hear Fang fighting to free himself from a third monster, whining loudly, but Harry couldn't have yelled even if he wanted to. He seemed to have left his voice back with the car in the clearing. He never knew how long he was in the creature's clutches. He only knew that the darkness suddenly lifted enough for him to see that the leaf-strewn ground was now swarming with spiders. Craning his neck sideways, he realized that they had reached the rim of a vast hollow, a hollow which had been cleared of trees, so that the stars shone brightly onto the worst scene he had ever clapped eyes upon. Spiders, not tiny spiders like those surging over the leaves below. Spiders the size of cart horses, 8-eyed, 8-legged, black, hairy, gigantic. The massive specimen that was carrying Harry made its way down the steep slope towards a misty domed web in the very center of the hollow, while its fellows closed in all around it, clicking their pincers excitedly at the sight of its load. Harry fell to the ground on all fours as the spiders released him. Ron and Fang thudded down next to him. Fang wasn't howling anymore, but cowering silently on the spot. Ron looked exactly like Harry felt. His mouth was stretched wide in a kind of silent scream, and his eyes were popping. Harry suddenly realized that the spider which had dropped him was saying something. It had been hard to tell because he clicked his pincers with every word. Okay. Aragog, it called. Aragog. And from the middle of the misty domed web, a spider the size of a small elephant emerged. Very slowly. There was gray in the black of his body and legs, and each of the eyes on his ugly, pincered head was milky white. He was blind. What is it? He said, clicking his pincers rapidly. Men, clicked the spider who had caught Harry. Is it Hagrid? Said Aragog, moving closer, his 8 milky eyes wandering vaguely. Strangers, clicked the spider who had brought Ron. Kill them, clicked Aragog fretfully. I was sleeping. We're friends of Hagrid's, Harry shouted. His heart seemed to have left his chest to pound in his throat. Click, click, clink went the pincers of the spiders all around the hollow. Aragog paused. Hagrid has never sent men into our hollow before, he said slowly. Hagrid's in trouble, said Harry, breathing very fast. That's why we've come. In trouble, said the aged spider, and Harry thought he heard concern beneath the clicking pincers. But why has he sent you? Harry thought of getting to his feet, but decided against it. He didn't think his legs would support him, so he spoke from the ground as calmly as he could. They think, up at the school, that Hagrid's been setting a something on students. They've taken him to Azkaban. Aragog clicked his pincers furiously, and all around the hollows the sound was echoed by the crowd of spiders. It was like applause, except applause didn't usually make Harry feel sick with fear.
But that was years ago,
said Aragog fretfully.
Years ago. I remember it well. That's why they made him leave the school. They believed that I was this monster that dwells in what they call the Chamber of Secrets. They thought that Hagrid had opened the chamber and set me free.
And you didn't come from the Chamber of Secrets, said Harry, who could feel cold sweat on his forehead.
I,
said Aragog, clicking angrily.
I was not born in the castle. I came from a distant land. A traveller gave me to Hagrid when I was an egg. Hagrid was only a boy, but he cared for me, hidden in a cupboard in the castle, feeding me on scraps from the table. Hagrid is my good friend and a good man. When I discovered and blamed for the death of a girl, he protected me. I have lived here in the forest ever since, where Hagrid still visits me. He even found me a wife, Mozag, and you see how our family has grown, all through Hagrid's goodness.
Harry summoned what remained of his courage. So, you never attacked anyone?
Never,
croaked the old spider.
It would have been my instinct, but from respect of Hagrid, I never harmed a human. The body of the girl who was killed was discovered in a bathroom. I never saw any part of the castle, the cupboard in which I grew up, kind like the dark and the quiet.
But then, do you know what did kill that girl? Said Harry. Because whatever it is, it's back and attacking people again. His words were drowned by a loud outbreak of clicking and the rustling of many legs shifting angrily. Large black shapes shifted all around him.
The thing that lives in the castle, said Aragorn, is an ancient creature we spiders fear above all others. Well, do I remember how I pleaded with Hagrid to let me go when I sensed the beast moving about the school?
What is it? Said Harry urgently. More loud clicking, more rustling. The spiders seemed to be closing in.
We do not speak of it,
said Aragog fiercely.
We do not name it. I never told even Hagrid the name of that dread creature, though he asked me many times.
Harry didn't want to press the subject, not with the spiders pressing closer on all sides. Aragog seemed to be tired of talking. He was backing slowly into his domed web, but his fellow spiders continued to inch slowly towards Harry and Ron.
We'll just
go then, Harry called desperately to Aragog, hearing leaves rustling behind him.
Go,
said Aragog slowly.
I think not.
But,
my sons and daughters do not harm Hagrid on my command. But I cannot deny them fresh meat when it wanders so willingly into our midst. Goodbye, friend of Hagrid.
Harry spun around. Feet away, towering above him, was a solid wall of spiders, clicking, their many eyes gleaming in their ugly black heads. Even as he reached for his wand, Harry knew it was no good. There were too many of them. But as he tried to stand, ready to die fighting, a loud, long note sounded, and a blaze of light flamed through the hollow. Mr. Weasley's car was thundering down the slope, headlamps glaring, its horn screeching, knocking spiders aside. Several were thrown onto their backs, their endless legs waving in the air. The car screeched to a halt in front of Harry and Ron, and the doors flew open. Get Fang! Harry yelled, diving in the front seat. Ron seized the boarhound round the middle and threw him, yelping, into the back of the car. The doors slammed shut. Ron didn't touch the accelerator, but the car didn't need him. The engine roared and they were off, hitting more spiders. They sped up the slope, out the hollow, and they were soon crashing through the forest, branches whipping the windows as the car wound its way cleverly through the widest gaps. Following a path it obviously knew. Harry looked sideways at Ron. His mouth was still open in a silent scream, but his eyes weren't popping anymore. Are you okay? Ron stared straight ahead, unable to speak. They smashed their way through the undergrowth, Fang howling loudly at in the back seats, and Harry saw the wing mirrors snap off as they squeezed past a large oak. After 10 noisy, rocky minutes, the trees thinned, and Harry could again see patches of sky. I'm going to end there. It's a good place to end. Wow, I didn't want to stop reading at all. That was intense. A spider the size of an elephant. Yowza! Okay, so there's another beast. Another one. It's not a spider. I wonder if, I don't know what this new beast is, but I wonder if Haggard feels the same way about this new beast. It's just a big beast who's angry and is unloved. Any questions that you have? I also have a question for you. What makes you love Harry Potter so much? What is it? You know, you love books, but some of you have this feverish love of it. So what makes you love it so much? Nothing. Nobody. The community it's created. Ah, okay, that makes sense. So you love it because of its community. Yeah, there's a huge community for this. Ginormous. It's like the new Star Wars, basically. So much more than a series of books, an entire world. Themes, power of the blood, love, conquering all, and mythology. Grew up with it. Read the first book at the age of 5 and the last book at 18. Yeah, that makes sense. Just like, yeah, growing up with it, that makes a lot of sense. Can you tell by now? She doesn't. Yeah, she's good, but I'm wondering why you love it so much. The magic. Love as the greater magic, all that. I think you're hinting at stuff to come. Please don't do that. I don't know that love is a theme there. The character work, suspense, archetypal themes, and whimsical language. Yeah, the whimsical language is fantastic. Mudbloods. You love those mudbloods. The fantasy and escapism into magic as a kid. It makes me forget all my problems. That's nice. Got me through the hardest time in my life. Moving to a new school, losing my grandmother, feeling alone. Oh, I'm sorry about that, but I'm really happy that the books did that for you. That's really wonderful. Night Owl Nerd. Growing up with it as well as the lore. Yeah. Every time I read it, I find something more to love and be interested in. It's a story about goodness, winning out, and people doing the right thing in the face of grave danger. And no one is what they seem, everyone is deeper. Yeah, I'm noticing that. There's definitely always new faces to different characters. So I'm interested in what Lockhart's new face is. Because he seems very one-dimensional to me. Grew up with it too. Also the intricate storyline, everything lines together. You read that a few weeks ago. I grew up with it and waited every year for a new book to come out. We could get one and I'd share it with my bro, reading a chapter at a time each. Oh, that's nice. I like that. Reading aloud to each other or passing it. I like that a lot. First book series that I grew up with, While It's Something. So you grew up with it. So it's fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, we got 1 minute left here. Please, shout out to a couple of people to follow. Mark at yoc.creations. My brother does art. Mike Voth, 1984. Go follow him. It's, again, been a pleasure reading for you. That was a fantastic chapter. Really enjoyed that one. I'm going to be back tomorrow at 6 o'clock. It's going to look a bit different. This is going to be outside. We'll see how that goes. And again, if you're feeling down, have courage. Reach out to somebody. And if you know somebody who seems happy all the time, but you haven't reached out to in a while, reach out to them. All right. Have a good evening. And the intense music is still running. See you all tomorrow at 6 p.m. with Conk's Corner with John Reedsley.